hold these point of views, and I've talked to dozens and dozens, if you push into this objection that David Cross and others raise, often what they communicate is something like this. They'll grant maybe that a person named Jesus actually existed, and that he did have some sort of a message. And maybe that was written in, argument's sake, say, that he spoke in Aramaic, which would be true. That is the language that Jesus spoke most of the time. And so if his immediate followers took what Jesus wrote and he wrote them down, they wrote it down in Greek. This is what we have, the original copies of what we call the New Testament, the Gospels, those biographies of Jesus' life were written down in Greek. But here's where it goes wrong. They say, well, people, as time goes on, they're no longer speaking languages. They're no longer reading languages like Greek. They're reading languages like Latin. And so they take those Greek copies, they translate them into Latin, and they get rid of the Greek copies. They're old, dusty, nobody's using them anyways. And then more time goes on, and people aren't speaking Latin anymore. They're speaking languages like Old German. And so they take those Latin copies, they translate them into the German, they get rid of the Latin copies. And this goes on for a number of different languages until eventually you get to what we have as our modern English translations. And so in that sense, what they're thinking of is that you have a translation of a translation of a translation. The problem is that is not how you got your Bible. If you are holding a modern English translation of the Bible, it is not a translation of previous languages all the way up, a translation of a translation of a translation. When you hold a Bible, it's translated from those original languages that I referred to before. It's translated directly from the Hebrew and the Greek, and actually translation committees, these groups of scholars and academics who get together to translate the Bible and make it understandable in your language, in my language, they actually take into consideration how previous translations rendered certain things, but they're not translating from those previous languages, they're translating from the original languages and seeing how throughout history, different individuals and groups have rendered those words in previous or different languages. This is a confusion of translation versus transmission. Translation is going through one language into another. Transmission is the long history of how we go from texts written in ancient languages 2,000 years ago to today.